And now there's this battle going on between Sound of Freedom and Disney's Indiana Jones. What's going on here? Why is Disney fighting?
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a movie review. Over the past week, many of you have likely already heard about Sound of Freedom, a relatively low-budget indie movie that's been doing quite well at the box office. In this video, I'm going to discuss what this movie's success means, why I believe that it's a complete industry game changer, and how it could impact Hollywood moving forward, followed by a more traditional critique of the movie itself. As usual, I am here to give you a unique perspective that you aren't likely to hear anywhere else, and if you like this type of exclusive content, please make sure to subscribe and get notifications. And with that out of the way, let's begin. Sound of Freedom is a movie directed by Alejandro Monteverde, based on a true story of a US agent that helped crack down on an international organization of criminals. Now, since this platform frowns upon the use of certain terms, let's just say that these criminals were professional, fiddlers? Anyhow, the movie, starring Jim Caviezel, Mira, Sorvino, and Bill Camp, was actually filmed in 2018, but couldn't get a proper theatrical release until 2023 due to the loss of its original distributor, which left the entire production in a state of uncertainty for close to 5 years. You see, originally the movie was supposed to be distributed by 20th Century Fox, but after Disney's acquisition of Fox in 2019 and 2020's strange and unexpected international illness, Sound of Freedom ultimately ended up being shelved by Disney, looking like it would never actually see the light of day. However, Eduardo Verástegui, the movie's producer, had put up a lengthy fight during which he was able to get the movie's distribution rights back from Disney, but even after he managed to do that, he ran into another big hurdle. No other major studio wanted to release his movie. In addition, all the major streaming services that were offered the movie had passed on it as well. While none of the parties I've mentioned have ever given any type of official explanation, it is quite possible that due to the movie's sensitive subject matter, they decided they wanted nothing to do with it. And with his back to the wall and his entire movie in jeopardy, Verástegui had then found an unlikely distribution partner, Angel Studios. Now, for those unfamiliar with Angel Studios, they're a small Utah-based media company, distributor, and streamer that raises funds for its projects through equity crowdsourcing. After getting positive feedback from their community of investors, Angel Studios purchased the movie's worldwide distribution rights and then raised $5 million for the film's distribution through crowdsourcing. Contrary to big Hollywood studios that usually release a movie right before the weekend, Angel Studios decided to release Sound of Freedom on July 4th, 2023, and with the help of a strong grassroots marketing campaign, Sound of Freedom won the box office on the day of its premiere. Now, just to put things in perspective, on the day of its release, Sound of Freedom made over $14 million in US ticket sales, which was more than the $11 million that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny made on that same Independence Day. Considering that Sound of Freedom only had about 5% of the production and marketing budget that Indiana Jones had, no backing from a big Hollywood studio, and not much help from the access media, this type of success is almost unprecedented. Unsurprisingly, ever since its successful premiere, many mainstream access media outlets have been desperately trying to explain why the movie is making money at the box office, as if their own livelihoods depended on it. One excuse that I keep seeing come up is that the movie is Q adjacent and that the movie is trying to push certain right-wing political talking points and theories, which is why it's attracting right-wing viewers. Another excuse I see a lot is labeling the movie as faith-based because of its distributor Angel Studios, which typically attracts viewers of faith. Now, do I think it's possible that some people went to see this movie because of these reasons? Sure, but in my opinion, labeling the movie as political or faith-based is both disingenuous and a disservice to the people who made it. Let's not forget that in 2018, this was considered a legitimate Hollywood movie that had a distribution deal in place with a major Hollywood studio. It is absolutely not the filmmaker's fault that the studio was purchased by Disney and then the project was shelved. And even if the studio that ultimately released the movie ended up being more faith-based, that doesn't mean that the movie itself doesn't have merit or that it can't appeal to a wider audience. In fact, when I went to see the movie, I was sitting in a full theater with people of all different backgrounds. Regardless of how the mainstream access media wants to label this movie, it does address an important universal issue that rarely gets any attention these days, one that everybody should be aware of, regardless of their beliefs or political leanings. But beyond politics or subject matter, in my opinion, the success of this movie in and of itself is revolutionary, and I dare say that it could signal a real shakeup within the entire entertainment industry, something that Hollywood should really be taking notice of. Sound of Freedom, if nothing else, proves that with an enthusiastic group of crowdsourcing backers, a theatrically released movie doesn't need the approval of the Hollywood system, it doesn't need its resources, it doesn't need its distribution deals, and it doesn't need its mostly favorable press. It just needs people to believe in it, support it, and go see it. And since in recent years, most major Hollywood studios have themselves been producing less middle-of-the-road type of content, they keep making less money at the box office, which means that theaters are making less money from ticket sales as a result. That's probably why the big theater chains who need money were happy to work with Angel Studios, and the success of Sound of Freedom means that they will likely work with them again. And that's where things get even more interesting. In the previews that ran before Sound of Freedom, there was a trailer for a new upcoming sci-fi movie by Angel Studios called The Shift, starring Neil McDonough and Sean Astin. And when I saw the trailer, something dawned on me. Real Hollywood actors are beginning to sign up to appear in these type of movies produced completely outside of the Hollywood system. And while I understand that neither McDonough nor Astin are considered A-listers by Hollywood standards, they're still both established seasoned veterans with impressive acting resumes. And although Angel Studios didn't actually produce Sound of Freedom and only act as its distributor, it's still worthy of mentioning that Mira Sorvino, who appears in it, is actually an Academy Award-winning actress, and Bill Camp is also considered a well-respected character actor. I guess what I'm saying is, with Hollywood producing so much mediocre, divisive, dumbed-down and derivative entertainment in recent years, it wouldn't surprise me if we see more established actors start signing up for some of these more niche-based independent productions, whether it's Angel Studios or smaller independent studios that will rise up in the future, regardless of their politics or beliefs. I think that this industry shift could actually open the door to an entirely new era of more quality independent filmmaking, and as something of a film connoisseur myself, I'm eager to see how this unfolds. As for the movie itself, I would say that it was good for whatever it was supposed to be. While I myself am not always in the mood for overly serious dramas, and it doesn't get a whole lot more serious than the subject matter of this film, I do acknowledge that it's an important movie, and if it raises awareness when it comes to children's safety, then that's something that I do support. I was also impressed with how respectfully and delicately the movie handles its subject matter, never being overly graphic or glorifying any of the events happening on screen. It's obviously a very sad movie though, so that's something that people should be prepared for, as it may not be for everybody. When it comes to the storytelling, I think that the writing is effective enough. I wouldn't say that the screenplay is impeccable, but it gets the job done, and you always understand what's happening on screen, as well as what the character motivations are. Acting-wise, I think Jim Caviezel, Mira Sorvino, and Bill Camp all do what's expected for them to get the job done. Ideally, I would have liked to have seen more of Sorvino, but since she's usually far from the main story, I do understand why she wasn't more heavily featured. It was nice for a change to see a male figure of authority that is presented in a positive light, and equally nice to see a wife that doesn't belittle her husband every second, but actually encourages him to stop some bad people from doing bad things. If I had to point out this movie's biggest strength, it's probably its economical yet effective production value, directing and cinematography. When you're working with a relatively small budget, you never want your movie to look overly cheap, and you could tell how much thought and planning went into making Sound of Freedom look like a bigger movie than what it is. The movie is filmed in many different geographical locations, which really gives it a bigger and more international feel. The different camera shots, tracking, and angles are all well planned and really add to the atmosphere of the story. The movie never feels lazy or shabby, and considering the hurdles its filmmakers had to face in order to get it released, it's hard not to appreciate what they've accomplished. I also like that the movie included a personal message from Jim Caviezel at the end of the movie. I know some access media cynics have criticized him for encouraging the audience to buy tickets for their friends, but you know what? When you're releasing a movie with very little resources, I think this approach of spreading the word is fair enough. Considering that this movie is perhaps too heavy for repeat viewings, I can't blame its producers, cast, and crew for trying to raise awareness towards it or its important subject matter. What did you think about Sound of Freedom? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.